I have a permanent allergy to alcohol from being on testosterone patches. Let's talk about it while I lay in bed and get ready for allergy testing tomorrow. So, as much as for the most part I don't regret my transition and I attribute it a lot to emotional needs that I needed met elsewhere and in therapy, and transition kind of kept me safe during a very hard time in my life. And for the most part, I would like to think that I do not regret being on testosterone and that I would do it again. I do have a permanent side effect from being on the patches. I am allergic to alcohol, ethanol specifically, so ethyl alcohol, which on the surface it's like, okay, don't drink, or don't put hand sanitizer on your skin. But it's a lot more than that. I'm allergic to a lot of cosmetics products that have small amounts of alcohol in them, soy sauce, fermented foods like kimchi, pickle, mustard has a fair amount of stuff, apple cider vinegar, red wine vinegar, vinaigrettes. I can't apply perfume directly to my skin generally. I'll usually spray my clothes and let it dry. I can't drink at all. I tried once and it was a very bad time, and I just hives everywhere, sick for several days. But yeah, so how that happened is when I was on the testosterone patches, I started to develop kind of a contact dermatitis reaction. It wasn't super bad, it kind of warm me, the adhesive can kind of irritate the skin and whatnot. And at the time, I had ended up on the patches because the injections were on back order, and I had developed an allergic reaction to another one of the injections. And so we were like, we'll just do the patches because I didn't feel super comfortable with the gel because I lived with other people and I worked with the public a lot at that time. So I started the patches. So I started to notice kind of a contact dermatitis reaction on the skin, but it started to get progressively worse. Like I would put the patch on, and about 4 hours later, it would just get very itchy. So I was doing like cortisone, topical Benadryl, and kind of just seeing if my skin would adjust. And I'd been on patches for like 2 months at that point. So it's kind of like, maybe my skin's just not taking it well. I'm not really sure. And it just might be like irritation because obviously you rotate where the patches go. I was putting them like here and on my legs and just following directions. I was very determined for them to work because whenever I would go off testosterone, I would not feel great for a variety of reasons. But I was very determined to make it work. And there was one day where I put one on before work, and about an hour into work, I just remember wanting to like claw my entire leg where it was, and I just like ripped it off in the bathroom. And I stopped using the patches. I was briefly off testosterone until the injection that I could use came off back order. But regardless, I didn't think much of it. It's a patch, it has adhesive, it has medication. There's a lot of things that could be causing an allergic reaction. At the time, I didn't know that you could experience a central sensitization, I think is what it's called, when like your whole body becomes allergic to something from like a comparatively like mild reaction. And I remember I had like a reaction to hand sanitizer one time. I used it, and like half an hour later, my whole hand was like red, and there were little bumps, and they were swollen, and it didn't go away for like 2 to 3 days. But I was like, maybe there's something in that particular hand sanitizer. Didn't think much of it. And then on my 21st birthday, I had one glass of wine. And I assumed at the time the reaction I had was a result of it being wine. I knew that wine could like cause redness, flushing. I just had extra possibility of that happening. Like my whole body itched. I was red all over. I had a rash and like a few spots on my body. I was probably like, not doing that again. Um, and again, I didn't think much of it. And then COVID started, and I started working at a new job where I was using hand sanitizer all the time, and my hands were just so swollen, so red, little bumps all over them, and I realized it was the hand sanitizer. I'm like, well, okay, this must be an alcohol allergy. It took very hard to convince people that it is a real allergy when it comes to being like in the medical setting, because it's like, no, like when I say like I'm allergic to alcohol, I am allergic to alcohol, specifically ethyl alcohol. But anyway, at the time I was like, okay, well, this sucks. But I didn't really think about like permanent consequences of that. Um, And so later down the line, I like started making kvass, which is like a mildly fermented drink, and I started reacting to that, and it was like, okay. And I was also having like these random reactions on and off. And then I eventually found the Australia Allergy Association. I'll link it in the summary thing below the YouTube video. But they had come out with an official list for alcohol allergies. Up until that point, there was no list. The only information I could find was one scholarly article for one woman who was on like a progesterone patch or something and developed the same kind of central sensitization, but it wasn't nearly as severe as mine tends to be. Because it appears that hers was only reaction to like drinking like a solid drink of alcohol, whereas I was extremely sensitive. And it was like soy sauce and fermented foods and all these things that I didn't realize had alcohol in them. So when I started cutting those out, I remember being like, I'm cured, because I would have these episodes where like I would go out with friends for like sushi, and then like the whole rest of the day I wanted to like claw and like pull my hair out and like just like peel off my skin, which is a horrible sensation, as you can imagine, especially if you don't know why. And I knew the only thing that would like fix it was taking Benadryl. And for a brief moment, I was like, am I developing an addiction? I've already like done emotion things to avoid my emotions in the past. Maybe I'm experiencing some kind of panic attack. But I remember when I got that list, it was just like. But on the flip side, it's been very hard because I had to give up a lot of things. There's a lot of hot sauces I can't have soy sauce. I will still have like certain items in moderation, but I have to take Zyrtec on top of my regular like allergy MCAS management plan. Um, I do sometimes think that it is possible that I don't have MCAS and I am just reacting to small amounts of alcohol that are naturally produced by the body, or like are in foods or that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it hasn't really mattered because my symptoms are kind of the same. And I just have random reactions occasionally. But it's definitely one of those things where I'm like, was this preventable? I don't know. But it is one of the few major regrets around my transition. One thing that I can't do because of it, related to my job, is I cannot do sterile compounding. I work in pharmacy, and sterile compounding requires the use of ethyl alcohol. It's very similar to kind of surgery stuff where there's an expectation that you can sanitize your hands. Not just, like, to be clear, there is an expectation that you wash your hands, but it's certain, like, you can wash and then you can, like, sanitize between glove changes, that kind of thing. Whereas, like, sterile compounding, you wash and then you sterilize and then you put gloves on and then you rub those down. It's multi-step process. But because of that, I'm not able to do sterile compounding, and I do feel like it has held back my career, and that's been very hard because it feels like this one small choice I made the rest of my life. I can't get drunk. For a long time, I was extremely bitter about that, especially like 21, 22, finding out I literally cannot drink at all. Um, that was really, really hard for me. I felt really bitter for a while because I felt like a lot of my friends kind of were just getting like a ticket to like be emotionally checked out, and it was like, why do I have to be emotionally clocked in? Why do I have to be the one to detransition? Why do I have to be the one who's not drunk or high or whatever? Why do I have to have MCAS? Why do I have to have an alcohol allergy from being on testosterone patches? Why do all my friends just get to be on testosterone patches? Now, obviously, this is not a healthy way of thinking. I'm not espousing these thoughts at all. In fact, I would argue for the most part, I do not agree with any of those thoughts now. Um, but at the time, especially 21 to 26 ish, 25 ish, that was a really hard thing for me to kind of process. And again, I think when you're on the spectrum, there's already kind of that social divide. So being like, oh, well, I can't even go out drinking was kind of like, more permanent consequences from detransitioning. We hate it. But yeah, I think it would be really interesting to know if anyone else has had this effect from being on testosterone. I think when people talk about side effects from testosterone long term, they're usually talking about like bottom growth or voice changes or like body hair and all sorts of things that a lot of them aren't reversible but aren't necessarily health issues. I do know some people have experienced issues with like bone or blood or whatever, but I don't know anyone else who has an alcohol allergy. I do not know a lot of other people who are on the testosterone patches now. They have been discontinued since then. That is partially due to the cost of manufacturing and generic brand, all that. They were very expensive when I was on them. At the time, I had insurance through my job, which is not great insurance, but it was like $75 a month after insurance and after the savings card. Um, and they've since been discontinued. Almost everyone I know who was on the patches also has since transitioned to the gel or injections or just not being on it at all. Anyway, I would love to know if anyone else has had any long-term medical effects specifically from being on testosterone or something else kind of that nature, whether it's surgery or other kind of typical transition related stuff. I would love to know. Please comment below or message me on Reddit or wherever else I can be found, Instagram, what have you. Um, I'm still recovering very well from surgery. My body is kind of continuing to relax. My body has not had a great week because I had to go off antihistamines to prepare for kind of some of this allergy testing to figure out what other stuff I've kind of become allergic to, because I am still having just miscellaneous reactions and stuff. So I'm not doing great, but I will be doing better once that's done and I can be back on. I also don't know how much more of my content is going to be detransition related at this time. To be honest, I mostly just did the deep flat videos to be like, look, someone can do it. Because there was no information really available on the internet. When I was Googling prior to having the surgery, it was basically like, I'm trying, and that was like the only post. And I would regularly post on the Detrans Reddit over the last couple of years being like, I am struggling so bad with this. So I wanted like to contribute to the community I was part of. And so now I'm kind of like, where does this channel go? A lot of the other stuff I do is just ice skating, cosplay, that sort of thing. Let me know if there are other things related to detransition you would like to hear about or get advice on or that kind of thing. I feel like there's a big void of detrans con detrans content that is helpful and focused on moving forward with your life. Which I think even if you retransition, no matter what's going on, it is best to focus on content that is about moving forward with your life. I hope this video was enjoyable. If nothing else, I hope you learned something.